Imagine sitting across from someone who just spent the last hour tearing down your self-esteem, ignoring your boundaries, and making everything all about them. Then, without a hint of irony, they look you dead in the eye and say, with absolute heartfelt sincerity, "You know, my biggest flaw is that I just care too much. I'm honestly the most empathetic person in the room." It is a completely mind-bending moment. In an instant, the air leaves the room, and you feel like you have slipped entirely out of reality and straight into the twilight zone. Your brain scrambles to connect the version of the person sitting in front of you with the version they have manufactured in their own head. You are dealing with someone who routinely invalidates your feelings, acts out of spite, and completely ignores the basic emotional needs of everyone around them. Yet they genuinely view themselves as an absolute saint. This blatant contradiction does something dangerous to your mind. It forces you to start questioning your own reality. When someone is that confident in their own lie, you naturally begin to doubt your own perception. You look at their straight face and think, "Am I the crazy one here? Did I misjudge them? Am I missing something obvious?" You start replaying past arguments, wondering if maybe you really are the problem, or if you are somehow being unfair to them. It is an incredibly isolating, dizzying feeling, because the gap between their cruel behavior and their self-righteous words is so massive that it causes instant psychological whiplash. You are left standing on shaky ground, trying to make sense of the nonsensical, while they sit comfortably on their invisible moral pedestal. But here is the absolute truth you need to cling to. You are not crazy, you are not imagining things, and you are definitely not the problem. What you are experiencing is a classic, highly effective psychological trap. Narcissists are masters of creating an alternate reality where they are always the hero or the victim, but never the villain. When they claim to have deep empathy, it isn't just a casual lie. It is a core defense mechanism designed to keep their fragile ego from shattering. They cannot handle the shame of being seen as cold or selfish, so they loudly claim the exact opposite title to protect themselves. Understanding this twisted dynamic is your ultimate shield. Once you realize that their grand statements have absolutely nothing to do with reality and everything to do with their own internal delusion, you can stop trying to make sense of it. Spotting this trap for what it is, a desperate attempt to rewrite the truth, is the exact key you need to keep your sanity entirely intact. At the very core of narcissism lies a complete and total lack of insight. When you try to talk to a narcissistic individual about the pain they cause, you assume they are working with the same mental machinery as you, but they simply aren't. They genuinely lack the basic psychological capacity for self-reflection. They cannot look inward, weigh their actions, or experience a moment of honest clarity about how their behavior cuts other people down to the bone. To them, the internal landscape is a closed book. If you ask a healthy person to look at their faults, it might be uncomfortable, but they can do it. A narcissist literally cannot. They walk through life wearing thick, distorted lenses that filter out any evidence of their own flaws, leaving them entirely blind to the emotional wreckage they leave behind. Instead of a healthy conscience, narcissism functions as a massive, rigid psychological shield. This shield isn't there by accident. It is desperately designed to protect an incredibly fragile ego that cannot handle even a single scratch. Deep down, beneath all the arrogance and loud bragging, lives an intense, terrifying pocket of shame and insecurity. If the narcissist were to ever drop that shield and admit, even for a split second, that they acted cruelly, selfishly, or without empathy, their entire sense of self would completely shatter. They cannot survive that level of reality. So, to keep that fragile ego safe, the shield instantly blocks out the truth and replaces it with a beautiful, unshakable lie. To maintain their absolute delusion of superiority, they have to believe they possess the highest value human traits available. In their minds, they cannot just be average. They have to be the most loving, the most giving, and especially the most empathetic person around. This is why they can look you in the face and claim to feel everyone's pain, even when their daily actions prove the exact opposite. They have constructed an idealized, flawless fantasy version of themselves inside their heads, and they have fully, 100% bought into it. They are the star, the hero, and the saint of their own movie. Because they are completely disconnected from reality, they aren't consciously lying to you in those moments. They are merely describing the fictional character they believe they are. This is exactly why they sound so incredibly convincing when they speak. When they talk about how deeply they care, they aren't blinking, stuttering, or showing the typical signs of a liar, because in their own warped minds, they are telling the absolute truth. But you have to remember this rule and never let it go. Just because someone says something with extreme, unshakable confidence does not make it real. Confidence is not the same thing as truth. A narcissist can shout their empathy from the rooftops with theatrical passion, but a title is completely meaningless if the behavior doesn't back it up. Their loud proclamations are nothing more than a desperate smokescreen, and once you see through the illusion, their words lose all power to confuse you. To keep your feet firmly on the ground and protect your sanity, you have to strip away all the confusion and look at what real, authentic empathy actually is. True empathy is not a performance, a speech, or a badge you wear to look good. It is a genuine internal desire to understand someone else's pain, walk in their shoes, and actively change your own behavior to support them in that moment. It is simple, quiet, and actionable. If you walk into a room and see someone crying, real empathy means you don't dismiss them, mock them, or tell them to just get over it because it's inconvenient for you. Instead, you automatically soften your tone, adjust your body language, pull up a chair, and offer comfort. Empathy is also about having a built-in emotional radar that makes you hyper-aware of your impact on the people around you. An empathetic person catches themselves before they speak, pausing to make sure they don't cause unnecessary harm, insult someone, or stomp all over another person's feelings. It is an ongoing, selfless commitment to taking other people's emotions into account. Narcissists simply do not operate this way. Because they completely lack this emotional radar, they try to fake it by confusing basic material generosity with deep emotional empathy. A narcissist will drop a massive, flashy tip for a restaurant server, make a loud spectacle of a charitable donation, or buy an expensive, unprompted gift for a family member, and then use that exact financial flex as absolute proof that they are a deeply caring soul. They think that throwing money or resources at a situation replaces the need to actually respect you, listen to you, or treat you with kindness. They look at the receipt and think, "See, I spent money, therefore I am full of empathy." But true empathy costs nothing but your ego, while narcissistic generosity is just a shallow substitute designed to distract you from how poorly they treat you behind closed doors. The dangerous truth is that narcissistic generosity is always entirely transactional. It is never given freely out of the goodness of their heart. It is a calculated, quid pro quo business move designed to buy praise, secure public admiration, or gain future leverage over you. When they give you something or do a good deed, they are immediately opening an invisible ledger in their mind, marking down exactly what you now owe them in return. The moment you disagree with them or call them out on their bad behavior, they will instantly weaponize that past generosity throwing it in your face to make you feel guilty and ungrateful. This is the definition of virtue posturing. They are desperately trying to claim the social rewards, the praise, and the stellar reputation of being a good, saintly person without ever doing a single second of the actual heavy lifting or emotional work required to be one. They want the crown of a healer while holding the sword that cuts you down. And recognizing this performance for what it is will stop them from ever tricksing you into doubting yourself again. The absolute most frustrating, maddening part of this entire dynamic is the sudden, jarring realization that the narcissist actually knows exactly what good behavior looks like. Think about it. They wouldn't walk around loudly bragging about how incredibly empathetic they are if they didn't fully understand that empathy is a highly respected, deeply valuable human trait. They know the definitions, they know the buzzwords, and they know how much society prizes a kind, compassionate soul. They desperately want the prestigious title, the admiration, and the moral high ground that comes with being a healer, but they completely refuse to do a single second of the actual emotional work required to earn it. They want the applause without ever stepping onto the practice field. Experiencing this twisted double standard firsthand can leave you feeling physically sick, deeply angry, and utterly exhausted. It is a violent form of cognitive dissonance that shakes your foundation because you are forced to watch them demand credit for a virtue they are actively using to destroy your peace of mind. Surviving this emotional minefield without losing your mind requires a complete shift in strategy. And the secret is incredibly simple. You must stop listening to a single word that comes out of their mouth and start strictly watching their execution. Words are cheap, effortless, and easy to manipulate, but consistent behavior never lies. If a person continuously insults your character, stomps all over your boundaries, mocks your vulnerability, and acts completely blind to the pain they cause you, they are not an empathetic person, period. It does not matter how softly they speak, how many self-help books they quote, or how convincingly they cry about their own heavy heart. If their daily actions bring you chaos and disrespect, their self-proclaimed empathy is nothing more than a fiction. You have to stop waiting for their behavior to match their grand speeches, because that script is a total illusion. When they inevitably sit in front of you and start bragging about how deeply they care, or how much they sacrifice for others, you must resist the powerful urge to argue, debate, or try to correct them. Do not waste your precious breath trying to point out their hypocrisy, because their psychological shield will instantly flip your words around and make you out to be the bad guy. Instead, execute a silent, powerful reality check right there in your own mind. Pause, take a deep breath, and recognize their delusion for exactly what it is: a desperate, pathetic performance designed to protect a fragile ego. You don't have to convince them of the truth. You only have to hold on to it yourself. Mentally walk entirely out of the room, detach your emotions from their circus, and let them talk to the walls. Remind yourself with absolute certainty that you are not the crazy one. You are not losing your grip on reality, and you are not wrong. They are simply reading aloud from a beautiful, flawless script that they do not possess the emotional maturity, the depth, or the capacity to actually fulfill in real life. Ultimately, navigating a relationship with a narcissist who claims to be an empath requires you to become entirely unshakable in your own truth. You have to accept that you will never get them to see the glaring hypocrisy between their self-righteous words and their damaging actions. They are trapped in a lifelong loop of virtue posturing and ego protection, but you do not have to be trapped there with them. By shifting your focus away from their empty speeches and anchoring yourself strictly to how they actually treat you, you strip away their power to confuse or control you. You don't need their validation. You don't need them to admit they are wrong. And you certainly don't need to audition for a role in their fictional reality. Keep your wits about you. Rely on your own eyes and ears. And remember that no matter how confidently they read from their script, your sanity belongs completely to you.